Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What is going on, everybody? Congratulations to those of you who were able to win that Lombardi Trophy, that elusive fantasy football championship last night. And to those of you that didn't, I am sorry. Hopefully it wasn't anything we said that made you guys lose. It's definitely been a weird season all around for everybody, but if you were able to come away with the title, I think it should count as 2 this year, because it has definitely been a trying time, especially with games being canceled, moved around, postponed, multiple players being out. I mean, just like I have a league where you cannot start. There's no flex positions. It's 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a tight end. Multiple leagues like that where that's all you can play. And so, say for instance, with the Saturday games and the Friday games, and say you had Jarvis Landry in your lineup, and you didn't have any other bench players, and then come Saturday morning, you find out he's out, and all your other players have played. And we had a guy who wasn't able to actually put in a lineup and lost by 6 points. It's rough, man. Rough year with COVID. Hopefully we don't have to deal with this next year. I was lucky enough to be able to come away with 5 championships. Gabriel Davis got me a 2-point win last night. So thankful and appreciative of that, because it seemed like I was on the other side of that most of the year in some of my other very important leagues. So happy to have come away with at least 5 championships this year. Matt, how did you end up finishing out your season here in 2020?
I wanted 4, and then one of them I got Beasley. He was like the one receiver that didn't get majorly involved. But it was so weird. In a couple of them, I almost felt a little bit ashamed. Like one of them I won by 130 points because I had Kamara, Diggs, and Josh Allen. Like I had already won before the game started last night, and it was almost like one of those college teams where you pile on because you decided to be funny if you got 100 points.
Gotcha.
It was like the feast or famine. A couple of those, I had Kamara and Adams and Kelsey in one, and just like some of the players that exploded all were on the same lineup.
Yeah. As we talked about yesterday, I had a couple of those teams I went against that really kind of knocked me out of being in 10 of them, and then kind of like quickly realizing going into, I think it was Saturday, that I was like, yeah, this is just done for me. Going into Sunday, because there was one that had it was like Waller, Evans, Kamara, all on one team, and I was like, I'm not coming back.
And talk about a week where you could have actually gotten some Monday Night Championship miracles.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh Allen was solid, but if you had Diggs and you were down 40 points, you're probably like, oh, well, I had a good run. And then you look this morning, you're like, I had a better run than I thought.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I heard some people talking about on Sirius XM this morning. There was one guy that was down like 80 plus something points, and he had Allen and Diggs and ended up winning by 2 points because of the combined effort between them. So, yeah, it was – it's always good to be on the winning side of those. It always sucks to be on the losing side of those. If you ended up watching someone come back, which happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to everybody this year, and then obviously was on the winning side of that too. So again, it was definitely a fun interesting year, hoping we don't have to necessarily deal with all of this next year. Hopefully we can go back to a more regular NFL season. But let's finish talking about this week 16 championship games. We left off with a couple games yesterday, so we'll start with those, with the Chargers beating the Broncos 19-16. Lock 14 points, Gordon 7, Judy 12, and Fant 12. Judy really struggled with a couple of key drops in this one, cost Denver the game. Do you expect him to bounce back?
Yeah, I was excited about him pre-draft, and I know some people had him as number one. I thought it was a good pick and going to be a good opportunity, but unless something substantial changes, Denver's not going to be an incredibly high-volume pass offense. And, yesterday, after a couple of weeks of him not getting a lot and them being some loud complaints, they forced him 15 targets. He was credited with 2 drops. I would say he had several more than that, and they were big. One right in the end zone, one when they're down 19-16. Locke hit him right in stride going down the field, would have put them in surefire field goal range. Just dropped. I mean, it was a brutal day. He is a rookie, no off-season program. Hopefully he'll get better. My concern, if you're holding him in Dynasty, is, Sutton comes back. We've seen Tim Patrick be pretty good. KJ Hamler has looked pretty good at times. Yesterday, Deshaun Hamilton looked better than Judy, catching the ball in traffic and making some plays. No Fant's there. And we know in this system they like to dump off to running backs if possible. Where if you're the 4th or 5th option in a lower volume passing offense, what is the reasonable ceiling and expectation? I haven't seen him. I thought this was his chance this year with a lot of these guys getting knocked out to maybe step up and thrive, and he really only had one good game.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens next year. Obviously, we've talked about, has Locke done enough to keep that job? Will Denver go after a quarterback? That's something we'll obviously be discussing all offseason. I think out of most of those guys, as much as I liked Tim Patrick, and I still had Judy 3rd in my wide receiver ranks behind Lamb and Rager. Still think Judy's a very talented wide receiver. He obviously has not had a great year. I think we've seen over the past couple of years that not every rookie wide receiver comes in and just lights it up. And as you just mentioned, not having any kind of offseason or any training camps probably didn't help a lot of these guys. I mean, obviously Justin Jefferson's been balling out, but it's Justin Jefferson, and that's right. Nobody, like Lamb's had his moments. I'm trying to think of who else has even been up there.
Ayuk has come on and had some good moments.
But I mean, that's really it. Like, we've seen a good game out of Judy. I would say we saw some promising moments out of Rager, but we haven't seen really anything consistent out of him. So, and all those guys too in different offenses. Like Lamb earlier in the year, he looked phenomenal because he was being fed the ball by Dak Prescott and then kind of fell off for a little bit, then came back on once Dalton started finding his feet. Jefferson struggled early, but then he's come on obviously really hot. I think he's, for most people, and this again, I think goes to, stuff we can talk about in the offseason, but for a lot of people coming out, he was one of the top guys. And then we all kind of faded him because he went to Minnesota and he didn't have great time things and some of the drills that he ran at the combine. So a lot of people started to fade him, and maybe he just showed us that he was actually just this good. He was that good in LSU last year. Maybe don't worry so much about the combine and landing spot. So I'm not as worried about Judy. I think obviously my biggest fear with him is Sutton. Once Sutton comes back, does he come back and be that kind of alpha we saw he can be with Locke? And if that's the case, I still think Judy comes in as the 2. But I do agree with what you were saying with the limited amount they seem to throw the ball. I think
Fant ends up being the 2.
That's what I was going to say. I think that Fant is going to be the one that hurts him more than Patrick or Hamilton or Hamler, any of those other guys. I think it's going to be Fant that hurts him more. That I agree with you on that. That's what I was gonna say. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And again, we don't know if they're going to keep Locke. That's kind of our assumption now. Things could change. Could they change?
I think based on all the conversations they've had, they've already guaranteed Fangio's coming back and that they're going to try to leave the staff exactly intact. And from what they've discussed, I would be surprised at this point now if Locke isn't back.
Gotcha. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, don't sell on Judy. Don't take this 1 year as he's not going to be good, in my opinion. Again, We've seen years where it's taken 3-4 years sometimes for some of these guys to break out. If you're in a deeper dynasty league, Judy just may be a guy you're not going to be able to play for a year or two. I still think Pat Shermer is a good offensive coordinator. I think he'll figure out ways to get Judy the ball next year. We'll see. Speaking of rookies, Herbert has a great game here, 16 points, Eckler 15. The Chargers get their 6th win in route of Herbert breaking the rookie touchdown record. Congratulations to him. If there was anybody who could break Baker's record, for me, it would be him. He's been one of my favorite quarterback prospects over the years since really Baker. Do you think he is a lock for Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I think so. There's been some talk about Jefferson, who's close to breaking some kind of record too, for receivers, but I think it's got to be him. With the numbers we've seen. My question for you: do you think Burrow would have also broken it if he would have stayed healthy?
Nope.
I didn't think he was tracking to do it either.
He wasn't. I had posted. I didn't end up posting it because I didn't want to be mean to fellow friend of the network, Ricky Valero. But there was one point where Herbert was like really hitting his stride. I think it was 4 or 5 games into him starting. I looked at it, and he had already thrown as many touchdowns as Burrow had the entire year. Now, Burrow had a game more than him or whatever, 2 games, whatever. Yeah. But Burrow had already passed.
That's only 1 game.
1 game? Okay. Yeah, that's right. Because
Herbert came in. And
for the punctured lung incident. Yeah. Yeah, but Herbert had already surpassed him and had thrown many more touchdowns than him and less interceptions. I think that's the biggest key. And that was something we talked about though. None of us, I think, were on the Burrow train. That was Ricky. Ricky said that Burrow was going to throw for over 4,500 yards, 30 plus touchdowns.
Cincinnati was so bad.
Yeah, well, and that's what we all said, and I got what he was saying on Cincinnati was going to be throwing the ball because they were going to be behind, and he was right on that factor. But I also, I think we all talked about, but that offensive line is so bad. Is he going to have the time to? And they don't really have a running game. And now I'll give T. Higgins stepped up more than I thought he was. I was a little bit worried about what Higgins could do there, but he stepped up, and he's about to break. He needs 1 catch to break Chris Collinsworth's.
That's the other rookie receiver we keep forgetting.
Yeah, so Higgins has been great. Like I said, I'm happy for Herbert. I'm excited. My biggest thing now is going to be, what do we see in year 2? It does look like defenses has started to adjust to him a little bit, but now it looks like him and that offense is starting to adjust a little bit back to those defenses because he had a couple mediocre games in there, but he started to bounce back. Will this offensive coaching staff be there? Will Anthony Lynn still be there? There's a lot of questions surrounding the Chargers right now, but I am definitely excited for Herbert. I think you can, in my opinion, already put him into the top 10 of dynasty quarterbacks moving forward. There's not a lot of guys. I mean, I would almost say top 5, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So there's not a lot of guys I can think of off the top of my head I would take over him. And that'll be, again, some fun exercises we'll get to do in the offseason, talking about where players have come in and moved down, because pretty sure I was the highest in our quarterback rankings on Herbert. I know, obviously, you and Dennis thought Tyrod was going to play longer than I did. I said 3 or 4 games, and again, not because of performance like I thought. It was due to a medical thing, but Herbert got in there, and he did not relinquish that job. He played just the way I thought he was, so
it was
definitely exciting.
Performance, just not his own performance.
Very true. Very true. All right, so the Cowboys, Matt's Cowboys here, continue their winning streak, making us hurting me too in our picks. I think I dropped 2 games, so I'm probably little chance that I'm going to end up winning our pick'em thing now, because I'm not just going to go contrarian, because I at least want to finish second. I don't want the guy behind me to catch me.
Look,
so
I'm like Jake Gyllenhaal, just staring out at the Cowboys, saying, "I wish I knew how to quit you."
Yeah. They win 37-17. Hurts has his first kind of come back to earth game. 18 points. Sanders 18. Deshaun Jackson 15. The Eagles come up short. Is Hurts their future? We saw. I don't know. I didn't see the entire question, so I don't know if it was framed as in, is Jalen Hurts your starting quarterback for Week 17? I was told that the question was, is Jalen Hurts your starting quarterback? And Doug Peterson answered the question, well, duh. So I don't know if that means for the future, Week 17. What are your thoughts?
I think he meant for Week 17, because I think they'll have a whole offseason where they'll go over it and have to answer some questions. The other thing, I didn't realize Deshaun Jackson was going to be able to come back because when we last saw
we
him,
thought he was done.
that was a pretty bad leg injury. I thought he was going to be done. So really excited to see him come back and have another, big. When I saw there was an Eagle Jackson that scored like a 60-yard touchdown, I'm like, could that be Deshaun? And then you look. I think there's going to be growing pains. It wasn't a terrible game. It probably looks a little worse because Dallas's defense hasn't been very good all season. But let's see how he does against Washington, bouncing back. He was never going to be, undefeated for his career. I mean, they haven't won a ton of the games he started. He's just looked good. The offense, I think our friend Ricky, who you mentioned earlier, posted an interesting. He has a lot more turnovers than what Wentz had in a similar stretch right before he got benched. I think the factor that he brings is with how depleted Philadelphia's offensive line and everything is right now. He's a better fit for what they need to do and mobility and trying to make some stuff happen. I don't know if that means he's the great answer for the long term, but I think he's played better during this stretch than I thought he was going to, than some people thought he was going to. And he's definitely made the offseason of discontent in Philadelphia a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure my exact words when they made this move was, I don't think he's going to end up doing anything worthy of keeping this job. Maybe not exact sentence, but pretty close to that. He's been better than I expected. I know I said, because my feelings on him coming into the draft was I did not think he was going to be a great NFL quarterback. I didn't think he was ready. He's proved me wrong on that too. So, and we talked about it multiple times. It's going to be interesting if he plays well enough what they do with Carson Wentz. I know that he had a bad year. I think that fumble was bullshit. I was watching that game. His knees were down. That was not a fumble. So I agree he's got the turnovers, but so is Wentz. Like, Wentz was turning the ball over like it was, like he was going out of style there when he was the quarterback for the Eagles. So I think it's gonna make things very interesting. We already know Carson Wentz has come out and said that he does not want to be part of Philadelphia if he's going to be a backup. So what does that mean? Do they continue to lean on Hurts? Do we end up getting like a Chicago situation of this year where they come in and like, now Wentz is the starter, but maybe he has a real short leash, and the next thing you know, he gets a couple bad games and Hurts goes right in there, and then Wentz is sitting on the bench. Who knows? I think their best option is to just trade him. But as we talked about earlier, a couple weeks ago, that contract, while it's not as bad for the cap as we thought it was, it's going to take a lot to get that done. There's only a few teams that can take that contract on, and they're probably not going to get much back for him. So who knows if that happens. Overall, I think Hurts has been, obviously, as you mentioned too, much better than any of us expected him to be. There's very few I saw that were saying they thought Hurts would be good. So he's making this, I think, a more difficult decision than maybe the Eagles front office wanted it to be moving forward. For the Eagles, Dalton, 26 points. Zeke, 17. Thanks, Zeke. Appreciate you, buddy. It's been phenomenal having you on my team these past couple weeks. Lamb, 23. Gallup, 30. And Cooper, 16. Dallas's offense is coming together. Do you think that they end up making the playoffs? Do you think they can make any noise in the playoffs if they do make it?
Well, I'm not like the people that you live with that think once they're in, they're the second best team in the NFC.
Yeah.
But a couple of weeks ago, before Thanksgiving, I thought that they were going to be the one that, when we did our who's going to win, doing our picks for the NFC East, I thought they were going to be the one. They signed Andy Dalton for what he looked like Sunday. It took them longer than I thought to figure it out. I think we were similar in that we thought they wouldn't have that huge of a drop-off when they went from Dak to Andy Dalton. They had a massive drop-off for a while trying to figure it out, and maybe Zeke was more hurt than we realized, and that was letting it down a little bit. But yesterday or Sunday, I thought we saw a little bit of the Cowboy offense I was expecting to see with Andy Dalton. They look like they're kind of hitting their stride just about the time we wrote them off right after Thanksgiving. They've gone on a pretty good winning streak. They've had some good wins. Obviously, the 49er team that they beat the week before isn't that bad because we saw what they did to Arizona on Saturday. Philly had been one of the hottest offenses, coming in, and they managed to bottle them up. I think Dallas has the momentum and could easily win the East. that's where it ends for me because, I'm sorry if you're sitting there thinking you think Dallas has it over Tampa Bay. They don't have a better offense and they don't have a better defense. So I don't know what you think they have. Maybe they have a better kicker. I'll give you Greg Zuerlein.
The only way I could see Dallas beating Tampa Bay if they make the playoffs is if we just see one of those games where Tampa Bay just doesn't show up, which we've seen multiple times this year. And so I wouldn't be surprised by it. That being said, I still believe in Washington. I think they have the better team overall with what they have on defense and offense. Again, that team has looked extremely different with Alex Smith back behind quarterback compared to Haskins, Heineke, Kyle Allen before he got hurt. Obviously, Alex Smith has brought like a calming presence now. Again, if Terry McLaurin is out, that is going to hurt. They seem to have a pretty good connection. Antonio Gibson actually looked kind of good last week coming back that quickly from turf toe. Going up against an Eagles team that is also beat up in the secondary and the defensive line. I think it's probably why they flexed that game this Sunday night instead of some of the others, because I do think it's going to be a very good matchup. I think the Cowboys beat the Giants. I don't see that being an issue, but Washington, I do expect is going to find a way to beat the Eagles, which is going to put them into the playoffs. And I would say the same thing, though. I don't think Washington – no. The only reason I want to see Washington go too is I think they would give Tampa Bay a better game as well because of that defense. Now, I don't think the offense would be able to keep up, but I think that defensive line would be able to pressure Brady, and that secondary is good enough to hold most of their weapons in check. They'll find a way to get off, but
that's basically how I feel. There's technically 3 teams alive in the NFC East, although I don't give the Giants more than a puncher's chance.
Yeah.
I think the win for one of those teams is getting in and getting to host a playoff game. I just don't, even with how the NFC's been more uneven down the line. Mm-hmm. As we talked about, Tampa Bay looks like they're rounding into shape at the perfect time, and they have a ton of good experience in key positions. I just don't see any of those teams being able to keep up with them.
Yeah. All right, so the Seahawks beat the Rams 22-9. Goff 9 points, Kupp 14, Woods 8. The Rams are falling apart, and now they face they must face a must-win against Arizona without Goff, with John
and
Walker,
without Kupp.
With Kupp's out too. I did not see
went
that.
On the COVID list today.
Oh, jeez. So
John Wofford or Blake Bortles is
contract. Was it contact tracing or did he test positive?
They said they transferred him to the COVID IR. I didn't read all the details. I was just
hopefully that's contact tracing things. Then he can come back. If it's obviously positive, he's not going to be able to come back in time. But yeah, and then you got Wofford and Bortles right now. That if Murray can't come back, that's going to be a tough game to watch. So
it's going to be a limp game to watch. I mean, well, and Akers is out. Because Akers wasn't supposed to be the back for the regular season, I don't think.
Well, they did say today that there's a chance he could make it back. So I'm guessing because Henderson's out now. So it's either going – if they can't get Akers back, then you're Malcolm Brown.
I saw that play at when Henderson's running for the goal and they rolled up on his ankle. It looked like he might have – I mean, that didn't look good at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be
well, and the sucktastic thing – probably is Chicago at this point might be a more fun team to watch.
Yeah.
But they will probably have a harder road going against Green Bay. And if the Rams manage to lose to the Cardinals, which now seems eminently possible, those teams would both get in because they
have the better divisional record. Yeah.
Well,
or conference.
They'd have 9 wins and the Bears would be stuck at 8.
Gotcha. Oh no, I'm talking about like if I thought you meant if the Rams and Bears won, they would get in. Or, sorry, if the Rams and Bears lost.
No, if the Rams and Bears lose, the Bears are 8-8, and so they end up out. If the Bears win and the Rams lose, the Rams are out again at 9-7, second year in a row. They would have slumped in that. Yeah, I guess the Bears would have the. I was watching that Football Night in America, Steve Kornacki's scenarios, and that was one of the ones he mentioned.
Yeah, I know. See, I didn't know that part. I know that. Well, I guess that would make sense because what I was listening to this morning, they were saying Arizona is like Cleveland. I guess they have to win to get in. Now, the difference in Arizona's out right now. They're not in the last spot. But if Arizona loses, even if Chicago loses, Chicago's still in above the Cardinals because of their better conference record. So Arizona has to win. And then, yeah, I guess what it would come down to is if the Bears, which I mean, I guess they could. I don't see them beating the Packers, but anything is possible. They're definitely playing a lot better than they were earlier when they played the Packers. So it's possible they could beat them, but I'm not expecting.
As far as what I've seen, the Packers don't have the 1 seed sewn up. So
no, they don't.
They're gonna have to play. So
yeah. The Seattle Seahawks, Wilson 19, Carson 10, DK 11, and Tyler Lockett 7. Seattle wins the NFC West, but just has not looked good the past couple weeks. How do you feel about their offense going into this into the playoffs, kind of stumbling around still?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I was talking to my friend. We've done the last couple of years. You and I've been in them too. The playoff kind of fantasy bracket where you pick one player from each team in advance. I'm going to set up a bracket again this year for my work and probably for our listeners to put in. Who would you bet on in this Seattle offense? Metcalf, Lockett, Carson. They all have great talent, but none of them has been great. Even DK Metcalf, after the middle of the season when they were comparing him to like Jerry Rice, has come way back to earth. Russell Wilson's been okay, but not incredible. He went from being, top of the MVP talk to not even consideration. They've had a decent season. They're 11-4, could easily be 12-4, finish 11-5. They're going to be a top seed. They're a good team, but not a great team. And I have trouble right now identifying one single thing that they do incredibly well. Their defense is okay, but they don't have any like spectacular things. And right now, offensively, they're okay. They're getting by, not doing anything spectacular. Maybe that's enough. The NFC doesn't have any like truly probably dominating teams. Everybody has kind of their flaws. But I think Seattle has sort of lucked out in that the Rams and the Cardinals have fallen apart.
So looking at the standings, Green Bay actually has sewed up the 1 seed. If they lose, they're tied on record with New Orleans, but they beat New Orleans head-to-head. So they would go – I think the only thing that could change it would be Seattle. I don't know if Seattle could jump them for the 1 seed.
I think Seattle is the one that can jump them.
They can jump them. Okay. Yeah, because they both have 11-4, so then that does make sense. So Green Bay will have to play. Because I was looking at this like, yeah, they played New Orleans.
There was
they
a
did
reason
not play.
that they had to try to win, or that they weren't guaranteed.
Gotcha. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be Seattle. Maybe they can get it going. They definitely don't have the defense that they can rely on like they have the past couple years. So that offense is going to have to get going. I don't think they're going to have to win shootouts, and I don't think their offense needs to be as good as it was, say, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. But they need to be better at what they have been. If there was a guy that I had to rely on, for me, it probably would be Metcalf, just because he's got that. Even if, say, the Seahawks, get bounced in round 1, they at least DK has that shot of getting you like 25 points in that one game. So I take that, obviously, because if you lose, it sucks, but you can only have kind of like the one guy per certain team. So, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so then the Packers do definitely have to play this weekend. And speaking of the Packers, go ahead.
Yeah, because that would be interesting. I think Seattle has San Francisco.
Yes, they do.
Which isn't a gimme either.
Yeah. So the Packers beat the Titans on Sunday night 42-14. Tannehill 16 points, Henry 9, A.J. Brown 8, Jonnu Smith 12. Bad beat for Tennessee. Do you still think that Henry can get to 2,000 yards?
They got Houston. He's 223 yards away.
So it's possible.
It's possible, but I'm actually going to lean toward no, because we thought, especially with the way the snow was setting up and going against a fairly friendly Green Bay front, that he would do well, but Green Bay got out so much so early, and then Tannehill with the huge runs in that game.
Yeah.
Of course, your man, Jonnu Smith, following the Hayden Hurst plan of catching touchdowns after it no longer mattered for you.
Yeah, love him. Gotta love him. Well, again, I'm not going to hate too much on Jonnu, just because, we've talked about it throughout the year, the way they were using him in blocking and certain other things going on. We kind of talked about neither one of us thought he was going to continue the run he was on. They just weren't using him the same way. What's going to be interesting for me with Jonnu is that he's a restricted free agent. So does he end up, or I don't know if he's restricted. He may just be a free agent. I'll be curious to see if he ends up leaving Tennessee this year and if he can get a job somewhere else. But yeah, I would say we'll find out very early on in that game if Henry's going to have a shot of breaking 2,000 yards.
He's gone over 200 yards twice this season. Once was against Houston. He had 22 carries for 212 yards in week 6, and they had 26 for 215 against Jacksonville a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, the fact that he's gone for 212, he'd only need,
11 more yards.
Yeah, 11 more yards than that, and they're going to be trying to get it for him, I think.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. So I think you'll find out early on if they're going to try and push him toward getting that. If they just start feeding him, which I think they should have done at times on Sunday night, and they just didn't do. So if they all of a sudden come out and like the first 8 plays are just Derrick Henry handoffs, and then he's eating up yardage. I mean, we saw some Majay P. Ryan look like a world beater last week against the Texans. So. I know. So I do think that there's a shot. I would put it, in all honesty, if I had to cap it, I'm going 50-50 right now. I think there's a realistic shot Henry gets it because I'm with you. I think they do want to give it to him, and they're still playing to win that division. If they lose, there's a shot they don't win that division. So I think that they're going to do everything they can to go back to what they were doing, kind of control the clock, run the ball, and that could lean in Henry's favor to get into that 2,000 yards. For Green Bay, Rodgers 25, Aaron Jones 12, A.J. Dillon 25, and Devontae Adams 43. Dillon had his best game of the season. Do you think this is a sign of things to come?
I mean, I think with the weather changing and stuff, they're probably wanting to establish some strong running. It seemed like that must have been a little bit of the factor of trying to get him out there and start pounding with him, with the weather conditions. I thought Aaron Jones looked good when he was running the ball. He had a pretty solid yards per carry clip, but definitely the best we've seen from A.J. Dillon this season. He hadn't been a huge factor much of this season. It was interesting that here in what would be kind of a crucial game, he was coming out. So I'll be curious to see how they use him in week 17. It almost seemed like he all of a sudden supplanted Jamal Williams, who had been a pretty active part of their offense going up to that point.
Yeah, I think that's who he's going to supplant more than anything. Now, it'll obviously be interesting to see what happens with Aaron Jones. We know he's a free agent. I don't know if he's going to command that big money contract like we've seen from some other people or some other running backs, but I think he showed more that he's the Jamal Williams than he is the Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is like the lightning to the thunder in that kind of grouping. I don't think A.J. Dillon can be the lightning. He's the thunder. He's the power back. So.
And Aaron Jones, it seemed like they were close to an extension the first part of the season when we saw Kamara and Cook, and it seemed like they were going to get it done, and it just didn't quite happen. But he's had another pretty impressive and amazing season. He was great on Sunday night. I mean, it was over 9 yards a carry, I believe.
Yep. Some of that may have been skewed on the out-of-bounds run that he made, which I'm not complaining about because I needed those 5 points because, again, I only won by 2. So I'm not complaining that they got the playoff before the refs or Tennessee could challenge it. Well, and again, this will be more stuff we can talk about as we move into the offseason, but I would think there's a better chance he comes back because something I know you've brought up and we've talked about on here multiple times is a lot of talk is the NFL cap is going to go down. So I don't think a lot of free agents are really going to be leaving teams this year. I think more often than not, you're going to see these free agents staying with the teams they're on now, maybe taking lesser money deals, but like less year deals as well. So they can kind of go back out in the market in a year or two if hopefully the cap goes back up. So I could see Aaron Jones signing like a decent, like maybe 2-3 year contract and then try it again instead of doing like a 4 or 5 year like Henry or Zeke did. But the cap is going to be the biggest thing I think that affects free agents this year. It's going to be a lot of interesting decisions. That is for sure. So last night's game, the Bills came out and boat raced the Patriots 37-9. Allen 32 points, Moss 12, Diggs 41, Cole Beasley 32. The Bills cruise. Diggs goes off again. Both those guys, or even just one or the other, probably won a few people their titles with a Monday Night Miracle last night.
Yeah, I mean, Diggs looked incredible. Some of those huge catches and going, and there were some contested catches and just going up. I didn't realize till afterward, Buffalo is the first team to sweep the Patriots in the division since they realigned the AFC East in 2002. That is a pretty auspicious mark. This has really been their kind of ascending season. I think they're in good shape to be locked in as the 2 seed if they can handle their business on Sunday. And that's, you probably really want them to handle their business against Miami.
Yeah, I mean, as we were talking about off air, the Browns got a little bit of good news, I guess, in that Mason Rudolph is starting. But see, it doesn't seem like they're benching anybody else, so that doesn't change much for me. I mean,
if you can't get the ball to Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster and Chris Claypool, doesn't matter that they're playing.
Mason Rudolph beat him last year, so I can't. I mean, granted, that was with no Myles Garrett in that game, but still. Or no, I'm sorry, it was Duck Hodges that beat them. Sorry, it was Duck Hodges, but
no,
it was Duck Hodges.
No, it wasn't. Rudolph was that game that got Garrett suspended.
Yeah, the Browns won that game, though. That's why. Yeah, remember, that's why as Browns fans, we were all pissed because that was leading into it looked like we had finally corrected things because we had won, I think, against Baltimore. We had just beaten Baltimore. I think we lost to the Rams the game after that, but that was on the 4th down end zone play where Freddie Kitchens called a stupid play and they ended up losing. But it looked like the Browns were turning it around. Then you had the Thursday night game where Garrett obviously hits him with the helmet. At the end of the game where it was already over, the Browns had won the game, and then he goes and does that. And then they lost to Duck Hodges because that was the game I know it was Duck because they needed to win that game to stay in the playoff race, and they lost. And it was like, really, we got beat by the 3rd-string quarter. We got beat by a dude named Duck. Like, that was kind of the feelings last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. Like, it's great news for the Browns and the fact that they don't have to necessarily go up against Big Ben. But again, still a really good defense, very good coach team in Mike Tomlin. I'm sure if you're Dolphins fans, you're not feeling great about that because Buffalo, in my opinion, still has to play somewhat. I mean, we'll see what they do now if maybe they don't start Josh Allen because they hear, because taking their foot off the gas, we go Matt Barkley.
No, I think they still need to win the game.
They have to win to
assure themselves.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So maybe Sean McDermott's sitting there like, oh, well, Pittsburgh's sitting Ben. I don't want Allen to get hurt. So I'm going to sit Allen and put Matt Barkley in there because my defense is good enough. And that's going to help Miami, I would think. Now, I think the Colts are good because they're playing the Jaguars. I mean,
although they lost to the Jaguars on opening day, that's the Jaguars' one win.
Yeah, but that's Gardner Minshew's one win. And they got Mike Glennon out there right now. So I don't know. I don't think it's anywhere near sewed up. I know a lot of Browns fans are excited with that, but it's with the Mason Rudolph news. But I'm not gonna predict a win just yet. I think there's a lot of things. It's as we've seen, anybody can beat anybody on paper. Shit, the Jets just beat the Browns this past weekend, so anything can happen. For the Patriots, Cam 9 points, Michelle 6, and Jacoby Myers 8. The Patriots creator Newton got pulled. Looks like that they're going to go with why'd I forget his name? Stidham.
Yeah.
Week 17 as well. So we might have just seen the end of the Newton experience in New England and possibly, I hate to say it this way, possibly the end of Newton's career. Like he's not looked good at all this year. I don't at best, he's, I think, a backup somewhere. I don't think he gets another starting job.
No, I think this is the end of him as a starter because the big knock is he can't pass anymore, and that's fundamentally the job of the quarterback. He's not young enough and in his prime enough to just carry a team running wise. So it was an interesting swing and experiment, and it's not ending well for New England. They'll be lucky probably to get back to 7-9. So, with Cam being a free agent, it took a really, really, really long time for him to get signed this offseason. I don't see signing coming quickly because unless he changes his mentality, if he's happy to be a backup somewhere, he could probably get a job. That hasn't so far been the vibe we've got.
So what is our Super Bowl predictions? I think I had it Chiefs Saints was mine. So I mean I can't change it. I don't feel like it's fair for me to change it, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, if they're talking about what our pick is going to be for playoffs, I still want to see what the seeding is. But preseason, I think you and I were both Chiefs Saints.
I know Dennis had the Saints too. I don't remember if he had the Chiefs or not. I know he had the Saints.
He didn't have the Chiefs.
I think it was he had Pittsburgh.
I think he had Baltimore.
No, Baltimore. That's right. Yeah, he had Baltimore. So yeah, I mean, I would still, I still think the Chiefs are the odds-on favorites. Now, I had the Packers winning the NFC North, and I did have them losing to the Saints in the championship game. If that means anything, I did believe the Packers were going to bounce back. If I had to choose now, I would definitely take the Packers. They look like, in my opinion, by far the best team in the NFC. I know the Saints have been good at times. I don't think anybody is as good as what the Packers are doing, at least.
I'm going with the Cowboys. I mean, they're clearly the second best team in the NFC, according to the chatter in your local area. No, I'm just kidding.
Cowboys fans, gotta love them. But I mean, I guess every home state or hometown team's fans are delusional. So,
but no one can stand in their way except for themselves.
That's very true. All right, so some of the top news of the day before we get in. So I guess I'll give my little thing now. If you're watching and you guys have not seen the last 2 episodes of Mandalorian, we will be talking about today. Since we didn't get a chance to do it last week, we won't have time to do it this Thursday. We're going to finish giving our final thoughts on Mandalorian Season 2. We're going to do that right after we get through these 3 news headlines. So if you have not seen the last 2 episodes of Mandalorian, you probably got roughly 5-ish minutes of us talking about these news things before we go to Mandalorian. So I'm just giving you fair warning now. Bail out so you don't get any spoilers, because there will be spoilers. Goff has surgery. He's out Sunday. The Rams re-signed Blake Bortles, as we talked about a little bit. Doesn't look like he's going to be starting. It will be Walford. And obviously the hope is they're saying that Goff will be back by the time they get to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially if they don't have Cooper Kupp. Wofford was good in the AAF, I guess, but
the best passer apparently, leading in passing yards or touchdowns, something like that in the AAF. Yeah, so I'm told. I don't remember much of the AAF, but that's what I heard.
So well, the AAF, I mean, was two off seasons ago. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I said, I think the biggest thing for them is that I think they're hoping now that Kyler's going to be out. So at least it's somewhat relative on the quarterback front. If Kyler's in there, I think it's a big advantage for the Cardinals right now.
Yeah. I mean, the Rams are going to need their defense to come up big.
Yeah. We talked obviously just a minute ago about Cam possibly being done. Frank Gore is out this Sunday as well. Do you think this is the end of his career? Hall of Fame career, obviously. He's been phenomenal for has it been 14 years, I believe, right?
16 years.
Sorry, I did not mean to sell you short there, Frank Gore. 16 years.
Well, it's easy to forget the last 2 years with the Jets and the
very true
Dolphins.
Bills.
He was Bills, but then was he Dolphins then Bills?
I don't think so. I know he was Bills because he killed all of our Devin Singletary love for a while.
He's been on all 3 of them.
No, yeah, I know, but I'm talking about. I think last year he was on the Bills. He was just on the Bills last year.
Yeah, it must have been Dolphins the year before. It's just funny to watch them bounce around the AFC East. I think it probably is the end. Heck of a career. Yeah, I mean, he's arguably been their best, most stable running back this year too. Just keeps on chugging.
Yeah. Obviously, I hate to see that he had to end it like that. I'd have loved to be able to see him come out on the field one last time, maybe get like one more touchdown or something like that in a goal line situation. For him to have to end his career being hurt really kind of sucks. You don't want to see a player have to go off that way. But again, 16 years. There's not a lot of players you get to see talk about playing for 16 years. So good on him. Can't wait to see his Hall of Fame speech. A very interesting career too, from a guy that I think, when he came into the league was someone that a lot of people labeled as injury prone because he was hurt a lot at the beginning part of his career and then has turned into like this Iron Man like the past easily, I would say, decade, if not longer. So good on him. Excited for him. Hopefully he at least gets to be out there on the field one last time. And then last but not least, we'll just kind of finish it off with this. We've already discussed it a couple times, but the news came out that Mason Rudolph will be starting for the Steelers on Sunday. I've already kind of given my thoughts on it, so I'll just kind of sit back and let you have the last word on this.
I think it's an interesting move for Pittsburgh because they still have a potential option to get to the 2 seed. But, you know, we've talked about is Ben ailing? Does he need, you know, some rest? So maybe they're just trying to play it out. Maybe they don't really feel like there's a huge difference between 2 and 3 this year since there's no bye.
Yeah, I could see that. You know, my biggest thing I think I brought up when we talked about it yesterday was, and I know you've mentioned it, we've talked multiple times how they seem to have gotten screwed the most out of any other team when it came to the COVID scheduling with the way games were moved around. They never really got their bye week. They got screwed kind of just like Denver did.
Twice.
That when they were supposed to get byes, they didn't find out till late in the week that their games were being moved or postponed, so they didn't even get the time off they were supposed to get. You got Ben, who's coming off Tommy John surgery. So I think it's smart for them to kind of rest him. We've seen it in games. I've been watching, obviously, because I've got so many shares of Deontay Johnson, you know, multiple times games where he's shaking his elbow or grabbing his elbow. You know, again, as a baseball fan that I am, watching players come back from Tommy John is not an easy thing to do. So I think a week of rest is going to help him some. And I don't think there is a big difference really from 2 from 3. So you go from either playing Cleveland again, if say they end up keeping the 2 seed somehow with, well, no, there'd be no way because if they lost, the only way I guess that would happen is if they lost, they beat Cleveland, but then Cleveland ends up getting in because Indy loses, which I don't see happening. So there it was going to be either Cleveland or who's 6 now? Baltimore.
The Dolphins went to 5, yeah. So that actually might be an argument to not.
Yeah.
Although, hold on. If you think that that it's possible Miami loses, Baltimore will vault up to 5.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at either Colts who just beat Cleveland or
Miami. Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not excited about the Browns getting Buffalo if that ends up happening that way because I've been saying I think Buffalo's are like one legitimate contender to the Chiefs. So, you know, yeah, not going to be fun. But it is what it is. We'll definitely talk more about that on Thursday. We'll have Dennis back with us. That will be our last episode of the week. We'll kind of go over every game, what we expect to happen. We'll talk some fantasy because I'm sure there are people who still play in Week 17 championships. But that being said, we're going to jump in and give our last thoughts on the Mandalorian, the last 2 episodes, The Believer and The Rescue. Again, we didn't get a chance to talk about these last week or the week before because I think I was not feeling well and you had some stuff going on, so we ended up canceling the episode. So we're going to do that today here and kind of close out our Mandalorian fireside chat we've been doing all year long. So starting with The Believer, I like that episode a lot. I thought it was a great penultimate episode. We saw a great arc from Bill Burr. What were your thoughts on seeing Mando take off his helmet there toward the end of that episode and what meant like he had to do it to be able to get Grogu? So what were your thoughts on seeing that moment and him kind of putting aside his ideals and beliefs to be able to take care of the child?
And we've seen him, I think, been thinking about it differently since he first met Bo-Katan. With what they said about that's not true of all Mandalorian. That was we're in a fringe sects. You know, it's like the guy that was in a cult that doesn't know he's in a cult until somebody tells him. But then, you know, I think we've seen too his love and attachment for Grogu. You know, leading to him making that decision. And, you know, I think at some point in time it was going to be that they want to be able to use the actual actor more too. You know, Pedro Pascal, you don't really hire him and slot him in there so that you can never see him. So that I think from that standpoint, it makes sense and moving forward, but it's also the evolution of his character. Because you think about where he was, you know, that episode where you could tell he was moved and kind of was in love with that widow lady in the shrimp alcohol patty in season 1, but couldn't do it, couldn't bring himself to take off his helmet or break the rules to where he is now. It was an interesting move, led to an interesting sequence. I saw a lot of people comparing that bar scene a little bit to the opening sequence of Inglourious Bastards, where Christoph Waltz is kind of questioning and having the back and forth with that family.
Yeah.
You can feel the tension and the what's not being said. And I thought it was some really great acting from Bill Burr, who the first time we saw him, I didn't think that much of his role. That was kind of the heist episode where everything went wrong in season 1. It was interesting to see him brought back. And I thought he had a really great arc in this one, kind of showing the complexities, of these different movements. The big knock against him was that he had served the Empire, and I think you see him really having some regrets about that, trying to make it right. I just thought it was a really good episode. Kind of maybe gives you a little bit of an idea of where they might go in the future. That was an episode without Grogu. It was more of a kind of standalone job episode, which seemed like what the Mandalorian was going to be when they first rolled it out last year, and then it's gotten a little more involved on a pretty specific plot, but gives you kind of an idea of how it might work again.
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was phenomenal. It's, we always kind of just assume that these stormtroopers, for the most part, are just kind of mindless robots who can't hit anything, can't hit the broadside of a barn when they're shooting at you, but they don't have any real, emotions, feelings, anything like that. And we've kind of seen that that's not the truth. I mean, we saw it obviously with Finn in the newest movies where he rebelled. You see, obviously, the group of other people who were sitting on, don't remember the name of the island planet where the Death Star crashed, who were all stormtroopers as well that bailed. And then you get to see, obviously, people like Bill Burr's character who clearly had issues with the way they were kind of treated in the Empire, which you expect as well, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole thing of it. It was good. It was good to kind of see that kind of just arc for his character. Now, I'm curious to see if we see him come back. They obviously let him go at the end of the episode, so curious to see if he makes another appearance here next season. No little baby Yoda here in episode 7. How did you feel about that? Is there a potential, you just mentioned, is that how you expect this to kind of move forward for the future without them probably having him at all possibly next season?
Yeah, and I think they might go back to that. They set up something that we can talk about when we talk about the finale, where I think we get a little bit of an idea of what he might get involved in season 3. But the idea originally was kind of these standalone spaghetti western style, doing jobs and quests, and I thought it worked really well in that standpoint.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on that, or should we move on to the rescue?
We can move on to the rescue.
All right. So obviously that was, in my opinion, one of the best episodes we've seen, not just with the action stuff. You got the drama with him facing off against Moff Gideon, what happens, which we'll save to that part with the Darksaber. I mean, I just want to kick it off with obviously the big one. What surprised you the most? I know for me, I don't know if you've seen, there was a video, I'll see if I can find it on Twitter, of it was a meme of Joey from Friends where he's sitting there and he's like, it's just one X-Wing, and he's sitting there fine, and then and then it hits him. It's just one X-Wing, and he's like all excited. I mean, as soon as I saw that, I was like, no way. They seriously are finding a way to bring back Luke Skywalker into this. That was what my thought was. My wife had no idea. Granted, as we talked about off air, she's a massive Star Trek fan. She likes Star Wars, but her Star Trek is more her thing. And she had no idea why I was geeking out. I wasn't for sure, but I was just like, oh my God, seriously, they're bringing him. Now, I thought it was going to be like Mark Hamill. They were going to figure out a way to do it. That obviously brought back his voice. It wasn't him.
I think he was on the set.
Was he? Oh, that's right, because
Yeah.
you said he tweeted out a spoiler at one point.
Yeah. So at 12:01 on the day it was released, he's like, "Anybody seen anything good on television today?"
Uh-huh.
So I guess he did participate in doing it.
So, I mean, what were your thoughts? Biggest surprise? I mean, for me, I feel like there's nothing else you can take away from that except for that moment. Like, that was huge.
That was a pretty huge surprise because you thought there'd be somebody, and there had been a lot of rumors it was going to be Mace Windu, which I still don't know 100% how they make that work. And then you'd have questions like, why TF did he not show himself during the A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi? He was alive, but he was just chilling somewhere, hiding. But you see the X-Wing, and I thought there had been some discussion that it might be the character from the Jedi Fallen Order. So I thought for a little while it could be Cameron Monaghan's character. But it was great when you see him, and then R2 rolling in there. I think the other great piece of fan service, Favreau and Filoni are fans, like the rest of us, is you see kind of Luke starting to rise to what he's going to be in Return of the Jedi, and you leave with the sense that he's kind of developed into that at the end. But then by the time we see him in the sequel trilogy, he's, had some rough patches, and he's an older guy. He's broken, mentally and physically a little bit. So it was kind of neat to see Luke Skywalker kick ass.
Yeah. And that's going to be interesting to see if we see any more of that with Ahsoka Tano's new show. They've obviously mentioned a bunch of other different stuff. Do we get to see more of this possibly younger version of Luke Skywalker and bridge more of that gap? Because, again, we really don't know much outside of he starts up his own Jedi Academy and it doesn't work out. Like, that's all we really know.
Also, let's hope Grogu, bounces.
Part of that,
becomes a dropout before. That was the other meme. They had him at the end of that episode. I will protect the breath of my life, and then older Luke from Last Jedi saying, "Kylo Ren killed all my students."
Yeah, that was the other meme I saw going all over the place as well. So I just mentioned obviously just a minute ago before we start talking about Luke. Was the Moff Gideon, that he has a fight with Mando there with little baby Yoda. Looks like he is going to just let him take him. They get into a fight, and seems more like it was a more well thought out fight from Moff Gideon than we thought it was when the fight first started. What were your thoughts on that?
I think Moff Gideon just saw there being no downside, but also Mando was the only person in the free world, including audiences watching, that thought that Moff Gideon was just going to let him take Grogu and leave. I mean, I'm like standing there, I'm like, seriously, bro, don't turn your back on.
I mean, I did. I thought maybe he was just like, you know what? Because he did say he got what he needed out of him. Maybe he was being honest and he didn't want to give up the dark saber. So maybe he was just like,
Mando's lucky he covers his entire body in Beskar, because but it was kind of the reverse. This probably the second best episode now this season was the Jedi, where you see Ahsoka Tano and that awesome fight where she's got the lightsabers and the lady she's fighting has the Beskar, and it's kind of an even and interesting fight. You saw it kind of reversed here, where Mando has the Beskar spear, and that's really his last best weapon to fight, and he disarms him. I think for Moff Gideon, I don't think he necessarily wanted to lose, but I think he calculated that there wasn't a lot of downside, because he thought that there was a chance the guy wouldn't kill him, and also he obviously knows that sword has to be taken in battle, so that was kind of a final F you to Bo-Katan.
Yeah, that was what I was referencing right there is if he felt like he could not win, or if that he wasn't going to die, he knew that he was giving the Darksaber now to, in a way, giving it to Mando, knowing that Bo-Katan couldn't do it. And what kind of rift does that cause between them now? Because Bo-Katan, the only way she's going to get the Darksaber back from Mando now is by beating him in battle, which is just going to... You could see how like pissed she was in that scene, seeing that. Like, I wonder what I would imagine there's going to be some kind of resolution to this, or there's going to be something that happens in season 3 with this. We don't get to really see a resolution in season 2, because that's when obviously Luke has already come through and does his business and everything. So
Well, I made the guys I was watching. We had a rewatch at work on Monday because a couple of the guys hadn't seen it. It's a nice way to ring out 2020. Lunch in my office watching it. I made a couple of them laugh. I was like, there's a third option. If they get married, it's community property, right? As my wife says, my wife always says, what's hers is hers, and what's mine is hers. So.
Exactly. Yes. Anybody who's married knows that no true words have been spoken. So. So what did you think about the end? We kind of already talked about, obviously I assume you agree with me that it was a great moment. It worked having him there. It was cool to see. It obviously sucked. I will say one of my other favorite memes of that moment was, because I love the movie Big Daddy with Adam Sandler. I don't know if you saw that meme where he's carrying Grogu away and Grogu is looking back at him, and it's the scene from Big Daddy where the social worker's taking the little boy away and he's like, but I wipe my own ass. I wipe my own ass. And he's just like, I know. And like, you just see that little tear right there on Mando's face. And he's just like, I know, Grogu. But it was, I thought it was great to see, obviously it sucks to see Grogu leaving. We don't know if, I would imagine they'll find a way to make him a part of the show again. At least I would think, but we don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was a natural kind of conclusion to the quest and the arc. I think the season 3, we could see him turning his attention to the battle for Mandalore. What's the bummer to me with a little bit with all these spin-off shows that we talked about is, like Cara Dune has her own show. Boba Fett and his buddy, they have their own show. So you're talking about a lot of, what are potential story options? You're peeling a lot of the Mandalorian characters off and putting in their own show. Ahsoka Tano has her own show. So it kind of leaves, he's either going to be doing kind of one-off quests, or maybe I was wondering if he wasn't going to be intrigued with trying to go fight for Mandalore, joining a cause bigger. That seems to be something that's been appealing to him, a cause or something bigger than himself. But the ending, I think this was their best episode that they've ever had. And you went from like the highest of highs, seeing Luke Skywalker and just like blown away, to that goodbye scene, and putting a little hand on his helmet and pulling his helmet off. It was emotionally devastating.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, it sucks to see because we become so invested in those two as kind of like a team, and almost the way that they portray it, like a father-son dynamic between the way that those two treat each other. So it was horrible to kind of see that end. And that's why I say you hope that they find a way to possibly bring those two back together, but we don't know that. That's kind of the bad part about that. What'll be interesting if they make it into a possible battle for Mandalore, then is how does that play in with Bo-Katan and the Darksaber? Because we know she wants that to claim her throne, and he can't just give it to her, as we learned in that episode.
Tried.
Yeah,
he's tried. Like,
he can't. So
he's like, I yield.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I still think there's ways for them to weave the other characters back in. We saw, as you just mentioned, Boba Fett and Fang had the after credit scene where they go in, take over Jabba the Hutt's old place, and looks like they're going to be running their own possible crime syndicate. I still think there's ways they can weave them in. Cara Dune, I think, will still be a part of Mandalore. Might be great ways for them to kick off their shows, is when you start off Mandalorian season 3, kind of take him to different places of what they're doing and see what's going on with them. Overall, I'm excited to see what they do next so far. I mean, even going into that first season where we expected, like you said, for it to be the kind of spaghetti Western stuff, the first couple episodes were amazing, and none of us expected it to be centered around him trying to take care of who we referenced at the time was Baby Yoda. We never expected that, and it turned out to be a great show. You mentioned just a minute ago, Filoni and Favreau are huge fans of the of Star Wars, the whole franchise. So I think they're going to continue to do a great job. I can't wait. Now the new season comes out next year, right?
Yeah, and so that would be the interesting part. Book of Boba Fett, they said, comes out in 2021. Well, we already know Mandalorian season 3, the premiere date is Christmas Day 2021, which means it is the last thing to come out. So maybe those guys do their own show, and that's how they cycle back in, or maybe Mando makes an appearance. Let's hope it stays on track, unlike the Marvel projects for Disney Plus.
Well, I think obviously, hopefully for them, at least with everything going on in the world, it seems like we've all figured out ways to live with COVID, if that makes sense, and kind of do our jobs with it. I think obviously that's the biggest thing, especially with, I know, like Winter Soldier and Falcon. That was the thing.
Yeah.
Like they were filming in parts of South America where they got devastated by COVID and they couldn't do anything anymore. But I think we've got, was it WandaVision next month, right? It's just a couple weeks away, isn't it?
It's supposed to be really close to coming out.
That'll be something we can possibly
That's the
talk
thing.
about.
2021 could be huge for Disney Plus and kind of building out these worlds and universe. And they've clearly thought it out. I'm excited to see where they go. I think this Mandalorian set the stage really high after their first season. How would they follow up that high wire act? And they managed to top themselves, in my opinion. So with everything they rolled out, I'm excited to see what comes next.
I agree. And with what you just said there, though, is the one thing that I think could hurt future shows moving forward is we have such a high bar now with Mandalorian. I'm wondering I feel like I won't, because some people I think are going to go in, and if Boba Fett and Fang are not quite what Mandalorian is, they're going to say it's a failure of a show, where I think we got to give some of these shows time, because not everybody's going to be maybe will be invested in Boba Fett, because we were invested in him as a character in the original Star Wars movies. And we've seen kind of his portrayal now that he's back alive. Some people, I mean, they only know Boba Fett from this old dude to Mandalorian. They may not know him from the other ones. So that's my biggest fear, is that some people may not give these shows a chance. With Ahsoka Tano coming out, Boba Fett and Fang, if they come out and they're not like huge hits right off the bat with Mandalorian, like Mandalorian was, do they all of a sudden start saying, well, these are crappy shows, and not giving them a chance? So, I'm with you, though. Favreau, I think, has continued to top himself with everything he's done when it comes to Marvel. Now, this stuff, I can't imagine they're going to go. I would think they probably already know what they're doing in season, and they've known. You've mentioned many a times that they've known his name was going to be Grogu since the beginning, and everybody knew except for us as fans. So I imagine he probably has, however many seasons, this is going to be a plan laid out for the most part on all this. So I'm with you. I'm excited to see what they do next. I can't imagine it's going to be a failure. I think it's just going to continue to grow, and I do think it helps. Our biggest complaint is it's only 8 episodes, and some of them end up being only 30, 40 minutes long. I think that does help them, because they can limit the story that they're telling and keep it as intriguing and as good as it has been for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, that's what they said. All 8 episodes of Mandalorian season 2 are like 2.5 hours shorter than the sequel trilogy. Yeah,
so I think that helps them out a lot, but it's going to be fun to see. Obviously, I think with us being such big Marvel fans as well, we might do this with some of the other shows that are coming out. Again, we got I'm almost positive it's like the second week of January.
I think it's January 16th.
Yeah, that's what I think, because that's right around my birthday. So hopefully it drops. I'm excited to watch it. My wife's excited about that. So it's just another show I won't get to watch until she comes home, unfortunately. But
hey, at least you get to watch it.
Yeah, that's true. You're not going to get to watch it?
No, I'll watch it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Lindsay's given up. She just says, take your nerd pursuits downstairs.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I wish my wife would say that, so I could just go do my own thing. But because then I'm forced to watch Star Trek afterwards, and I could really not care at all about Star Trek. But it is what it is. So, as I mentioned before we started breaking down The Mandalorian here, me, Matt, and Dennis will be back on Thursday. That'll be the last episode of the week. We're going to preview everything Week 17. We'll kind of probably confirm it on Thursday, but just to give anybody who's watching now a heads up or listening to this episode later, we will likely be moving back to 2 episodes a week starting next week as we get into off season. We'll focus completely on probably the first couple weeks of playoffs. We'll recap, preview games moving forward. We'll talk about our playoff brackets and our playoff format stuff that we do with that Matt sets up. We'll reach out probably Thursday. We'll give anybody who's listening now a chance, or let you know now, I guess, Matt, we can talk a little bit off air, but I figure we can put something together, send it out to fans and everything on Thursday with that episode, get a bunch of people in that want to participate in that. We'll do same thing. I don't know if I'll give away a jersey, but we'll give away something if someone ends up winning all that. And then, we'll focus on Dynasty content and everything. So again, thank you to everybody who's listened this year, jumped in the comments. It's our first year really doing video, so that's been a lot of fun being on YouTube, Twitch, getting all the comments in and everything. We're looking forward to the offseason.
To see children and pets and
it's been a exciting season. So that is for sure. So we will see you guys again on Thursday. Enjoy your next couple